All right, so picture this. It's Monday morning, you are stuck in traffic, and you suddenly realize you left your lunch on the counter. And normally this would be a reason to freak out, but not today. In this scenario, you just kind of laugh to yourself a little. You take out your phone, and in just a few taps, you reroute your weekly grocery delivery. You have them rush you your lunch, no problem. Then you just push back your first meeting, and you let the building know that you'll be parking in the west lot today because, well, traffic. And that's just a small taste of what's possible when we're talking about the future of smart buildings, which is what we're diving into today with Cohesion's Smart Building Journey. They're trying to lay out a plan for how we can change our everyday experiences in the spaces where we're already spending most of our lives. So before we jump in, I've got our expert here who can help us break it all down. And one thing that's interesting to me here is this idea of smart buildings not as some luxury, but as something we just expect.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't that long ago when we only really saw these really high-tech things in a really nice hotel
Mm-hmm.
or a really fancy office. But now this idea of a seamless experience with technology is becoming normal everywhere. Think about something like electricity or plumbing. At one point, those were a luxury, but now they're just basic things you expect to have. It's becoming the same way with digital systems in our buildings.
Yeah, it's totally true. We are so used to having tech right there in our hands in pretty much every part of our lives. It
Hmm.
makes sense that our buildings would also change. And that's where these four stages of building experience from Cohesion come in.
Hmm.
They lay out where we've been and where we're going. So they start with what they call oh so retro. And I think we all have a soft spot for these kinds of spaces. Imagine like an older office building with some real character, the kind of place with exposed brick walls and maybe even one of those old intercom systems. There's just some charm to it.
You get more face-to-face interaction. Maybe
Yeah.
they have one of those community bulletin boards.
Yeah, exactly. But let's be honest. As charming as those spaces can be, they can also be a little, well, inefficient.
Yeah, for sure. There are definitely some limitations, like if you need to book a room, you might have to find the building manager. Or if it's too hot or too cold, you just have to wait for them to fix it.
It's all very manual. And that brings us to the next stage, what Cohesion calls barely digital. And this is where things start to feel a little too familiar, in a bad way, like those website portals that are supposed to be easy to use, but are actually so frustrating. The ones where you have to reset your password every 5 minutes? And trying to find the information you need is impossible. And those online forms, ugh, don't even get me started.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
it's like they're trying to make something old seem new, but it doesn't really work. Like putting a touchscreen on an old rotary phone, you technically have technology, but it's not actually any better.
It's almost worse. Because you think it's going to be convenient, like, oh, this building has an app, this is going to be so easy. But then it's just a total letdown. And this frustrating, barely digital stage is exactly why this next step from Cohesion is such a breath of fresh air. They call it palm of your hand. And this is where things get really interesting. So in this palm of your hand stage, we really start to see what smart buildings can be.
It's really about using tech to make things easier and make it more about you.
For sure. And Cohesion has this great analogy. Imagine having one app on your phone, and it's basically like your control center for everything in the building. You need to get into your office, just tap your phone. You need to book a last-minute spot at the gym downstairs. You can do that right in the app.
It's about meeting the expectations of people who grew up with smartphones. That's all they know. So they want things to be easy to use and personalized. And now we're seeing that in buildings.
Totally. It's like how we already order food or call a ride from our phones. We want that same level of control, and buildings are finally catching up. But Cohesion doesn't stop there. They take it even further with their final stage, what they call the unified platform. And this isn't just about one app. It's about making everything in the building work together.
It's taking that idea of a super app, which we're starting to see everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and using it for buildings. Like imagine an app that connects to everything in the building, from how much energy it's using to which rooms are free.
This is where things get really futuristic. Like, what if the building already knew what you needed before you even did? So you walk into a meeting room, and the lights are already how you like them. The temperature is perfect, and your presentation is all set up.
And that might sound like something out of a movie. But it's all possible because of data and AI. As the system learns how people use the building, it can start to guess what they need.
Yeah, it's like in those movies where someone walks into a room and everything changes automatically, but now it's real life. But here's the thing. This unified platform can also work with things outside the building.
Exactly. Think about connecting it with things like food delivery apps or ride-sharing services. Your building becomes the center of everything.
That takes convenience to a whole new level, and it really makes you think. If buildings can learn what we want and connect us to everything around us, what does that mean for cities in the future? It's like every building is its own little city.
Yeah, exactly. We don't think of buildings as just buildings anymore. They're always changing and adapting to what we need. It really makes you think about what's possible.
It does. We tend to think about technology as separate from the buildings we're in, but now it seems like they're going to be the same thing. It's a huge change. We're not just making buildings smarter, we're changing how we live and work and just how we interact with everything around us.
Definitely. And that takes us back to that question Cohesion asks. If buildings can be more than just containers, if they can be these dynamic spaces that are almost like an extension of ourselves, what does that mean for how we think about work or our homes or even cities?
Yeah, like if a building can change based on what we need, does that mean the line between work and home just disappears? Could your office turn into your living room when you're done working for the day?
And what about community? Imagine if buildings could help people connect with others who have similar interests, almost like a built-in social network. That could really help with that feeling of being isolated that's so common these days.
Absolutely. And it's not just about convenience and connection either. What about the environment? It seems like smart technology could make buildings much more sustainable, and that means more sustainable cities.
Exactly. Imagine buildings that can control their own energy use,
Yeah.
like turning off lights and changing the temperature when no one's there, or using AI to figure out the best way to heat and cool the building. We could really cut down on wasted energy.
So it's not even about being smart anymore. It's about creating spaces that are good for the planet. And that can change as our needs change and
Yeah.
that are designed for us. And that's something I really want to see happen. And it's not about having cool technology just because. It's about making our buildings work better for us, making them more connected, more responsive, more human. It's about making our buildings work the way we live our lives. Makes you wonder, what will you do with all your extra time when you're not fighting with the technology in your building? That's something to think about. The next time you step into any building, you might just be surprised by what the future holds.